Doug Miles with you tonight over the Sun Radio Network. All Sports Magazine is the name of the show, and that means you can call in and talk sports with us. 1-800-365-8833. And let's go to the phone lines right now and talk to Alan in Jackson, Mississippi. Hello, Alan.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Just fine.
What's on your mind tonight?
I'm trying to find out if anybody maybe would have known what happened to a player that used to play for the Saints back in the 60s when they first were going, a guy by the name of Steve Stonebreaker.
Steve Stonebreaker. No, I don't remember him.
He was...
Was he in their first year?
It was probably the first and second year. I'm in my early 40s now, but back then I was a Boy Scout and used to usher some of the games. And, of course, they lost every game, and about halfway through the game, they needed something for excitement down there. So Stonebreaker, we used to start a big fight. And, I mean, it was he'd start a good one. And he got fined real bad a lot of times, and they had people before the games at the gates to take up collections to pay his fines. So he was the only excitement the Saints had to go in for him. But I haven't heard the name in a long time, and I just wondered whatever happened to him.
Yeah, maybe somebody out there could call in and let us know. I don't know what happened to him. I remember, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, and in their first game, the Saints, didn't they run the opening kickback for a touchdown?
Yeah.
And then after that, it kind of went downhill.
Straight downhill.
Well, now they're doing well. I mean, you got to be happy with Jim Mora. Huh?
It's about time. Of course, we've always said all along down here that give them a little time. They're still an expansion team.
I tell you, once they hired Jim Mora, I guess 4 years ago, out of the USFL, he's done an outstanding job. I think he led them to the playoffs. 12-4.
He's really done
4 years
good.
ago, and undefeated now.
Yeah.
Great job, and it just goes to show once you get an owner in there that commits to a winning type attitude, any team can turn it around.
You're right.
How do you like them this week against Philly?
Right, I think they'll do good. I think they're on the way to they're going to do something really good this year.
I hope so. I've always been kind of a Saints fan in a way. They've just been such doormats for so long, but it's good to see them doing well.
Yeah.
Anything else on your mind?
That'll do it. I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll try and get somebody to let you know. It's
okay.
Kevin Stonebreaker or Steve Stonebreaker?
Steve.
Okay, if anybody out there knows where his whereabouts, give us a call here. Thanks for calling, Alan.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Alan in Jackson, Mississippi. Steve Stonebreaker, one of the characters, I guess, of the early New Orleans Saints. They've had some very unusual characters in their history of the NFL, and that did happen. They ran their opening kickback for a touchdown back in, 1968, I believe, was their first year in the league, back at the old Tulane Stadium. And then it kind of went downhill from then on, and once they hired Jim Mora as coach, got a new owner in there, they just have turned it around. It's good to see a franchise that has great fan support down there in Cajun country doing well. Let's go back to the phone lines, and let's head up to Boston, Massachusetts, and talk to Jeff, and actually Lowell, Mass. Hello, Jeff.
Hi.
How you doing tonight?
Hey, listen, this is a little strange, but I'd like to try and find out what people think in different parts of the country and what happened to the Boston Red Sox. We're all blue blood fans down here. In our perspective, it's because of Joe Morgan or this or that, but I feel it's differently. But I'd like to find out what people really think, not being so close to the situation. Maybe that might help us.
I'd say I was very surprised the other day when Joe Morgan got the axe. I mean, this guy turned it around about 4 years ago. Remember they brought him in, and then they won like 13, 14 in a row? Or
19, I think.
19 in a row. And, I mean, this year they were out of it pretty much in August and made a good run at it. In the last couple of weeks they kind of fell apart, but there's no reason to fire him.
Well, we're all kind of wondering what's going on. The guy had 2 first place and 2 second.
What more can you do? Yeah, what more can you do?
I'm just wondering if anybody could call in and say what they saw from a different part of the country, because we all see things differently. And maybe it would help, poor Butch Hobson who has to take over for him.
I know I saw in an interview with Morgan after he got fired the next day. He was just kind of exasperated over the egos, some of the guys he had to deal with. I guess Jack Clark would be number one on that list. And,
right, and another thing is, what is Butch Hobson going to do with Clark and Greenwell and all these egos? It's really, and Morgan said that too in another interview. What could I do? He threw his hands up. They won't listen, and poor Butch has his work cut out for him.
I know they just got Zip Zimmer. Don Zimmer is going to be a coach.
Yeah.
He was back there in the late 70s as manager and coach. Maybe he can help a little bit, but
Zip Zimmer, and Hobson brought in all the coaches. that he's familiar with. But I think Butch is going to be in for some trouble. They say Butch is the tough guy, but he hasn't come up against a Clark or a Greenwell yet.
It's awfully tough to motivate a guy making $3 million a year. If he doesn't want to do something, what are you going to do? He's got a guaranteed contract.
And everyone is aghast at the way they complained with the money they're making.
Yeah, I can never figure that out. These guys are making so much money. I mean, if I was making that kind of money, I might even clean out the lockers if I had to.
Yeah, take the injury and leave. I mean, and poor Matt Young. I mean, I just don't know. But I would like to see if anybody could call in and give us their version of what they saw. And then hopefully Butch is listening and he can get some ideas on what to do, other than looking through the knothole at the field, if you know what I mean.
Hey, Doug, I appreciate the call.
Well, one more thing I just want to stand off on, if I could, Ron.
Absolutely.
This whole Shoal Creek Golf Club thing. I don't know if you've talked about that on the show so far.
That's on the agenda.
This whole thing with this golf club that's going to be hosting the PGA, not letting any blacks in, has really caused a big furor. I think it's about time. Golf in the last 30, 40, 50 years has really gotten away with a lot of discriminatory practices. You look at some of these old-time members and directors of these clubs, especially the guy at the Masters, a guy named Howard Harden. He practically runs the whole television telecast of the Masters by CBS. Here's a guy that just doesn't have any clue, and I think that's pretty prevalent among these golf clubs, these stodgy members with these outdated rules and regulations. I think it's about time that the sponsors and the golfers got together and did something to change it.
Well, right now, many of the sponsors, including Anheuser-Busch, Delta Airlines, I understand, might be pulling out, and several other sponsors as well are going to be taking some action, and rightly so.
I think so, too. It's just crazy in this day and age to have those kind of discriminatory racial practices in professional sports, and it's nuts. There's plenty of money out there. There's no reason to have any kind of discrimination at all.
Well, that particular topic is definitely on the agenda, and we'll be picking that up probably very shortly. Doug Miles, I appreciate it. Hope to see you in the studio soon.
Okay, Ryan, good talking to you.
Thanks a lot.
Talk about tough jobs. How would you like to be the one to determine this year's most valuable player in the NBA? With the regular season ending this Sunday, sports writers around the country have to make up their minds and send in their MVP ballots. Now, let's say you're a sports writer and are given a ballot. What goes through your mind? First of all, you have to determine what MVP means. Does it mean the league's most valuable player? Or do you break it down to mean the player on a team without whom that team would not win? It makes a difference in how you'd vote. I prefer to go with the latter definition. Another question you have to ask is, what statistics do you use? Do you go strictly on average points per ball game? Or how about rebounds or blocked shots? As you can see, it's not easy. Now you may be saying, come on, Doug, it's not that difficult. The MVP's obviously got to be Michael Jordan, who's tearing up the league in scoring. The Bulls would be nowhere without Air Jordan. Others would say, where would the Celtics be without Larry Bird? They're a 500 ball club minus the Birdman. And how about the Atlanta Hawks flying without their human highlight film Dominique Wilkins? And where would the Lakers be without Magic Johnson? Or the Blazers less Clyde Drexler? And what about, well, you get the idea. It's an almost impossible task. The NBA has an embarrassment of riches and talent, making the MVP race each year a battle almost as close as the Democratic primaries. I think Michael Jordan is going to get the nod this time. He's totally carried the Bulls into playoff contenders while averaging 35 points per ball game and putting on a nightly show from city to city that P.T. Barnum would have envied. That's my 2 cents. I'm Doug Miles for the Sun Radio Network. Another potentially great NBA career might have been ruined by that deadly demon substance cocaine. Last week, University of Florida basketball standout Vernon Maxwell admitted to using the drug several times during the season. Now, I don't want to appear unsympathetic, but when are these athletes and people in general going to get the message to stay away from that stuff? I realize it's a powerful addiction, and anybody who has a drug problem deserves help. But when is it going to sink in? Anyone who starts to use drugs now, after all the tragic examples, like Len Bias and Michael Ray Richardson, should have their head examined. One thing the NCAA has got to do is crack down on drug use. Any athlete who uses illegal substances should be suspended for at least 1 full year. And if the athlete is a senior like Vernon Maxwell, the NBA should ban him from the draft for at least a year. Too many times the athletes who admit a drug problem is given a hand slap, makes them promise to enter a rehab clinic, and that's that. The only way to stop this madness is to make strong examples of these athletes, so youngsters in high school and even elementary school realize it will not be tolerated in college. For some people, it's not enough to just say no. They have to be told no, again and again. That's my 2 cents. I'm Doug Miles for the Sun Radio Network.